All right. Hello and welcome. Glad you guys are joining us. I see that we already got some people starting up. It is 8 o'clock. That means we're starting our show. I currently do not have anyone here in the studio with me to be part of the show, but we're going to have a show on recovery and life and all those things regardless. So, hoping that you out in the audience can make some comments and we can go over some things and have discussions. In recent news, I know that some people, like when I've been on the show with Tim, he's had me bring up a little bit about ICIPA, which is the International Conference of Young People and Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a huge conference that goes on for a great time of fellowship, unity, recovery, and a lot of fun. And for the past year, I've been lucky enough to be part of a group of people who have been bidding to bring the Icky. We're excited to announce that 2025 was awarded to the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. So that's a pretty big deal. It's something to be very excited about, and using this as an outreach to get more people involved. And a lot of people don't even know what ICIPA is. So I actually just ended up getting involved with it recently. It was about a year ago, and I was approached, and someone asked me to come help them out. And one of the things I learned about in recovery is that when AA asks, I say yes. So even though I had no idea what I was doing or what it was about, I said, yeah, sure, I'll show up. And it's been an amazing experience. I'm really glad that I'm really glad the people that came before me taught me the right way to carry myself. Because my first thought was, I don't know what that is, I'm not doing it. And luckily enough, that was my first thought. So, if you don't know about ICIPA, there is a website, ICYPAA, and I encourage everyone to go check it out because it's coming to Minneapolis. Whether you inform yourself or not, there's going to be a huge conference here, and look forward to seeing all of you there with me. Other than that, I don't have anything wildly exciting to announce other than there is a meeting here every day at 6:30, well-structured AA meeting at 2520 North 2nd Street in Minneapolis. Um, Other than that, I'm not really too in tuned. I know Pig's going on this weekend, so there's going to be less people that are here at Will Work. I saw that in the room tonight. Pardon me, I gotta sneeze. Luckily, I hit the mute button in time. But yeah, if there's anything else going on, put them in the comments. I'll announce them here on the show. I gotta sneeze again. I think I'm good now. I make no promises, but I think I'm all right. I think I got them all out. Let's see. I didn't get a whole lot of any notes or updates of because typically whenever I do the show, Tim will have like a little thing scribbled like Jake say this or announce this, and he didn't do any of that. So if the show is really boring right now, and you have Tim's number, just shoot him a text and be like, it's your fault. I know he would appreciate that. Other than that, and I keep getting the screen to flicker in and out. So if the show just cuts out, there's something going on with the internet. I got one bar of connectivity right now. Hopefully, we can stay connected. Things can go well, and we won't run into any issues. But I have at least communicated that it is a possibility. I'm responsible for the input, not the outcome. And that took me a little while to actually comprehend for a bit in AA or in recovery in general, because powerlessness and manageability is a huge thing that we're taught right in the beginning. And I always thought I was responsible for how things turned out. And I was to an extent before I came in these rooms. Everything that happened was at my own doing, it was my fault. And after that, when I would put in effort into things, they didn't turn out my way, or they didn't go as according to plan, I would have, sometimes it would throw me into a spiral, always thinking about the things that, that was this the right action? Did I do the right thing? Or was I not supposed to do this? Or how could I have done it differently? And I was taught a right action needs no justification. Okay. So if I put in the right action, that's what I'm responsible for. I'm not responsible for how it turns out. But if I do the next right thing, that is what I'm responsible for. And I got nobody watching. I was hoping some of you guys would tune in and give me something to talk about. Otherwise, we'll just sit here and you guys can watch me on my phone. As I research stuff. Oh, hey, we got a viewer. Check it out. It's been a little bit lackluster. Nobody's come back in the studio. I think anybody join us on the show. So I'm hoping for the audience to be able to post comments and jump in and give us topics, discussions, questions. It would be very beneficial to the show. It would help me with passing some time. It'd help us create some content. I'm going to give it like 6 more minutes. And if we got nothing by 8:15, then I am just going to give my story. And when I'm done, I'll shut her down. But hopefully, you guys out there are enjoying Pig or part of a fellowship right now where you're involved with your own recovery and or you're enjoying the gifts of recovery and you're out there enjoying camping or a vacation of some sorts. Maybe you're on the lake. All wonderful gifts that we get to enjoy because we're no longer chained to our chaos, which brings me a little bit of comfort in this moment. Welcome to any viewers just tuning in. We are currently blank.
Jake, you got it tonight?
Dude, there's nothing going on.
Yeah, well, you can, I mean,
I've sat here, I've chatted and to.
nobody even made an announcement. I didn't even hear from Tim today if you were coming, if he was
Oh,
coming, if he was coming.
yeah. I mean, I didn't hear any announcements today.
Yeah, weird it out. I don't
Whoops.
know why.
You want to get on the show?
Things are really in a disarray with this move, and
Well, come talk about the move.
no, I'm going home. I got a bad foot, and it's driving me nuts. That's why I came back to see what's going on.
Cool.
I don't know. There's a couple people in there. I don't know if they're gonna hang out, but you know how to lock this place up, don't you?
Every way I've done it is I lock this door, and then I walk out this back door.
Okay. I'll lock up the front, but I don't think anybody's, you know, it's pig this weekend.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I know it's big, and there's, it's nice weather this weekend. It's not super hot, so
Right.
not, it's something that we expect during the summer.
So I don't know what to tell you. I'll lock all that up. You're more than welcome to hang out or whatever. We'll head out the back door, make sure this door's locked.
Cool.
I'll see what's going on out here.
Well, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, you guys saw me try to get Paul on the show, and in Paul-like fashion, no, I can't do that. He said his foot hurts, so it's understandable. Paul is hard to get on this show. I've gotten to do it 2 or 3 times, but he sticks around for all of 5-10 minutes, and when we do get him on there, it's a lot of fun because he's all smiles and happy trails, as Paul puts it. So he's a fun one when you can get him on. And I got nothing going on. It's a little warm in this room. I noticed that they don't bring pizza into back here anymore. So I missed the pizza. It was really good pizza. If you're looking for a good place for meetings, I'm just going to use this opportunity to plug the Robbinsdale Alano. That's a place that I really love, and I really love the people there. I love that old building. It's contributed so much to my recovery. This weekend, on Saturday night at 7 o'clock, they have Snipe, SNYP, Saturday Night Young People. They determine young people as people who are young at heart with room to grow. So it's not exclusive to an age range. There is Sunday night DOA at 6 p.m. That is my home group, and we are a Big Book and 12 and 12 study. Right now, we are in the Big Book, and we are reading in. We are in chapter 3 currently, and A lot of good recovery there. It's really well mixed. You'll walk in there, you'll see just as many people under 40 as you will over 40. So there's a lot. They attract a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ages. Um, there's white collar, blue collar, no collar. Good group, really good group. So if you're looking for a meeting this weekend, and you're in the northwest suburbs, 7 o'clock tomorrow night at Robbinsdale Alano is Snipe. Sunday at 6 p.m. is DOA. So hopefully we can see you there at one of those two spots. Otherwise, tomorrow, all day long, is the Twin Lake Alano 50-year anniversary celebration. They've been around for 50 years. And they're going to have live music. They're going to have meals. They're going to have speaker meetings. They're going to have raffles. They're going to have everything going on for a really good time down there. There's going to be archives and stuff like that. So if you ever want to know the history of what's going on, what else is there going to be? Hopefully tomorrow, while you're in the area, you can stop by Twin Lake Alano. It is going to be all day long type thing. I think from 8 a.m. to they have live music going all the way to midnight. Or I believe live music is from 9 p.m. to midnight. I could be wrong. Hopefully somebody's watching this can give us the actual details. But I know there's going to be live music later in the night with dance floor, all that cool stuff. So stop by. We're not a glum lot. We're going to be having a lot of fun. And I know there's the Al-Anon speaker. There's an AA speaker. There's breakfast. There's lunch. There's dinner. So there's a lot of stuff going on just in the northwest suburbs this weekend. And hopefully you guys can be part of it. Otherwise, I know Pigs going on. I know that there's what's this weekend? Can't remember. I know next weekend is the North Dakota Conference for Young People. That goes from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Beyond that, I think I've covered everything going on this weekend. If you guys got something going on, post in the comments. I'll mention it on the show. Because again, this broadcasts out to YouTube, Facebook, multiple different pages, multiple different YouTube groups. So if you're commenting on one stream, other people won't be able to see your comment. So I'll be able to announce it. If you have questions, post in the comment section. I'll be able to see it, and then we can have discussion on it. Otherwise, I think in the meantime, just to fill some radio airspace and to try to give us somewhat of a show, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and hope. Just try to give a good story. I won't go into war stories because we all have war stories, but I grew up with a complete household, mom and dad, and I was an only child. My father did have two daughters from a previous marriage. They lived in New York, and outside of phone calls on holidays, birthdays, I was an only child, especially in the house, that type of stuff. So pretty well normal, and my parents were not drinkers or drug users, and I didn't really have any exposure to that. And as I got old, so I just did normal stuff. When I was 11 years old, my dad's oldest daughter came to live with us, and she had lived with us for about 3 months. And it was shortly around that time, or really short after that, when she had left, that I had um, attempted my first. Well, not attempted. I did. I had my first mind altering substance. And I don't know if anybody knows the comedian Nick Swartzen, but in one of his stand ups, he has a joke, so I have to credit him this because it's great. He said, "Could you imagine going to an AA meeting and you hear somebody stand up and be like, 'Hi, my name's Nick, and kiwi strawberry wine coolers ruined my life.'" And I remember that's actually the first thing I did. Is I was a little over 11 years old, and I had stolen a kiwi strawberry wine cooler from my grandmother's fridge. And that's how I got my start. But um, I think the excitement of breaking a rule, on top, coupled with everything else, was um, the thrill of it. But I do remember the little bit of warm feeling, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." But I didn't get drunk or anything like that from one wine cooler. But I did remember that I thought about another wine cooler. I fell asleep that night, and then the next day I thought more about that. So, um, but my parents and I, we lived in these apartments that there was a lot of apartments. Like there was, um, I think there was like 12 buildings, and each building had like 40 units. So big, massive, complex style. A lot of people my age, a little bit older, and I remember starting to run around with those guys that, um, they'd have weed and alcohol. And I remember the first time I got high, I was like, oh, it was couch lock, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. It was that Bill W. moment where he talks about I had arrived. And shortly after that feeling of euphoria, I remember thinking, oh, I'm never not doing this. So that was kind of my full dive into mind altering. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. And I'm 12 years old. And then as they're going on about that, there's alcohol, and I'm trying all different things. And I just kind of played around with that as I got through middle school, and then into high school. Things started to swing up a little bit because as I got into high school, there's more people that I'm connecting with that have the same interest. And one of my other interests that were not that was playing football, and I was okay at it. I was okay enough to have opportunities that I ended up pissing away because of the decisions I made. But there was a time I'd gotten in trouble at high school twice. The first time, they don't call it expulsion, but they did a 45-day suspension, and I had to go to an alternative center, and then I was able to return my sophomore year. So I did that, followed the course, and then the sophomore year, I think I made it till October, mid-October, and I got kicked out again. And when I got kicked out again, that was an expulsion because it was the second one that I had in a year. So I was kicked out of school, and I remember my dad did not talk to me for probably like 10 days consecutively. But then they came at me, both my parents, and they said, "Look, here's the deal. You keep getting in trouble with this stuff. You got two options. One is you're going to go to Teen Challenge, and you'll spend 2 years there, or you're going to go to military school, and you're going to spend 2 years there." And being the good young budding alcoholic that I was, an addict alcoholic, I negotiated out of that. I said, well, that's not going to work for me. And I pitched my offer. I said, I'll find myself a school to get into. And I said, I'll be sober, and I'll go to meetings. And they asked some follow-up questions. I can't fully remember what they are, but I remember I got my way on that. And I ended up going to Pease Academy, which is a sober school. They are the oldest sober school in the nation, and they are still operating today in Dinkytown. And they help kids 9th through 12th grade who are actively trying to live a program of sobriety and recovery and all that other stuff. So PEASE is an acronym, PEASE, Peers Enjoying a Sober Education. So I did that, and then I would go to a meeting here and there just to kind of keep my end of the bargain, I guess. Didn't get really involved. I'd show up, 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting. And then when the meeting was done, I was getting a ride right out of there, going back home. So I never did a sponsor thing at that point. There was a guy at this Pease Academy that, became my friend and asked, what are you doing after school? And I was like, oh, nothing. And I went and hung out with him, and he brought me to a meeting on a Monday night. And when I came to this meeting, I had that second feeling again of I have arrived, because it was it was a men's group, and these guys did everything together. They rode motorcycles together, they ate dinner together. It was a bunch of biker style guys that I thought it was the coolest thing to be part of that. And they're are you trying to stay sober? Yeah. Okay, well you can be with us. Cool. That was the only requirement. Well, in my head, that was the only requirement that I had to do. So that's what I did. And I followed that, and I did the bare minimum. And eventually those guys are telling me, oh, you got to get a sponsor. All right. So I got a guy that'd be my sponsor, and he had sponsored me for almost until I had 3 years of sobriety. So I had him for a little over 2 years, because I had some time sober before I walked into this meeting. But I did the bare minimum. I had the sponsor, and I was honest enough. I was willing enough, and I was open-minded enough to just kind of be able to stay in there without getting called out. Because that was another thing that they would do. If you were dying in front of them, they'd say, they'd call you out and say, why are you dying? Because that was another big thing about that group, is that you didn't get to die on their watch. If you want to die, it won't be in front of them, and they're not going to be the ones that let you do it. So that was cool, but I did just enough to stay under their radar. And I know I didn't fool any of them, but I stayed out of the spotlight, but also from the lower part, so that they focused on other guys that needed the help. And eventually the time came that because I wasn't honest enough, because I wasn't willing enough or open-minded enough, that I didn't get any of these promises. I made it to step 10 after almost 2.5 years, and I moved on to the idea that I was just young and I was getting in trouble. So I moved on, and I went out and did some more research. And I'd like to be able to fully say that after having that time in the program and having that kind of group of men and working with a sponsor, that I had figured out I had it figured out quickly enough. I would have came back within 10 days or so and said, nope, I figured it out, this did suck, or whatever else. And that's not the case. I was gone for 10 years. And for the next 10 years, I struggled with my identity and trying to keep things going. I tried to manage friendships, relationships, trying to be an adult. And it was constantly always in the back of my head of, like, could I be an addict or an alcoholic? I'm like, no, I couldn't be. And it's because I could keep things well enough under control. But I never actually had anything to prove for that. And the best way I can explain this is that for 10 years, it's like somebody blows up a balloon, and you're constantly having to keep the balloon off the floor. You bat it up in the air, and you try to do some things and go through life and live that way, and the balloon would come back down. You gotta bat it. You gotta stop what you're doing to bat it back up again. And I tried numerous methods. I tried only smoking weed, or I tried only drinking when I didn't have to work the next day. And I tried getting a job that would keep me accountable. And I mean, that worked. I had a job that um, required me to be alcohol and drug free during operation hours and before. You couldn't even blow, from the night before. So I would never drink before the night before work. But I was the guy that was in the Applebee's parking lot that took the $5 pitchers too far, and I'm the one that's urinating in the parking lot. So that was I had all those little signs, but I kept batting that balloon up in the air. And then eventually I moved on from that job, and I got this other job that was not accountable. And after a few months, I ended up playing around with the idea that I can get away with this or that. So I'd smoke a little weed and wouldn't get in trouble, nothing else. And then they gave me a promotion. So I'm like, oh, now I really got things under control. I'm doing really well. So I started playing with more things, cocaine and all this. It was mostly cocaine, and I would go into the bathroom every 20 minutes while I have a desk job. And they made me an engineer at that place, and I'd go in and I would every 20 minutes go to the bathroom, right? Like anybody who's been in our shoes would be able to pick that out right away and be like, oh, what are you doing? But I thought I was getting one over. And eventually, because the book does tell me that people like me are delusional, I ended up seeing signs in like the break room or whatever saying, do you have a problem? Here's resources to help. And I remember I saw those and I was like, well, that's new. That can't be a coincidence. They're definitely, they're picking on me, or the walls are closing in. So I had made a decision that I was going to go start my own business, and I was going to cut grass and do do that type of stuff to get away with my lifestyle that I wanted to have, because who's going to fire me? Me. But so I did that. I left, and I started up a lawn care business, and ended up being very successful very quickly, and rapidly upscaling it to the point where I thought I had arrived again. And as I came to that conclusion, I had a accident out on Lake Mille Lacs on a boat, and I capsized it and hurt some part of my back. But it was not crippling or debilitating to me in any way, but it got me a prescription for painkillers that it did not take long for me to abuse. And I remember they said that, well, if I still need to, I was on painkillers after like 6 months, and like, you're still not having an improvement. And I knew the right answers to say, and said, no, I still have this, and I need this to be able to perform my job duties and have a life and be able to do things at home. But that had gotten me, I guess I answered it too correctly, because then they said, well, then we have to do surgery. And I said, well, that's not going to work for me either. But I couldn't negotiate my way out of that. And they said, well, then you don't need the pain medication. So they took me off of it. And within 24 hours, I was reaching out to people on the streets and buying street drugs. And in that process, I discovered fentanyl, and quickly overindulged in that, and became just absolutely infatuated with everything that involves fentanyl, and chasing that, and always making sure that I had it, or I was always in the search of more, or just keep tapping that balloon to keep it off the ground. But this balloon would always sink a lot faster. And I remember that throughout the process, I'm still trying to manage my business and hire people to work for me, and I'm having high turnover rate. And of course, this is all, during COVID, but it's looking back, it's no surprise. Who would want to work for a narcissistic drug addict, right? Like that, I have no shock or surprise at it, and everything was my fault. But I'm around me and continue to scale up my abuse. But I continued to move forward, and eventually came the point where I'm fighting it so much, and that I was like, one of these things have to go. So I made the decision I was going to sell my business, so that I'll figure something else out along the way. Like I figured I was highly employable, and I had quite the skill set. I thought real high of myself, but I was just real high at the time. And I ended up finding a buyer, and after it was supposed to close in 90 days, and at the end of the close, it was actually a week before the close that my regular connection was not answering. I didn't hear from him for 3 days, and I was getting low, and I needed more. That chase that continued to control me, control every thought and thing that I had. Fear ran my life, and with the fear creeping in, I was afraid of getting sick and going to withdrawal. So I started casting Hail Marys, and I reached out to somebody that I knew was not going to be in the best interest of me. I knew that they had a bad history of screwing people over, and I knew that no good was really going to come out of this. But they did reply and said, "Oh yeah, I can help you out." And there's that part of me that, like, after I had all those thoughts of, the correct thoughts, the other part of me that was driven by the fear was, well, what if he does actually have some? So I get out of bed, and this is in February. It's like 3 a.m, and it's negative 30 degrees outside. So I get out of my warm bed, and I chase in the middle of the night, and surprise, surprise, I had gotten robbed. And on the way home, I just had all these thoughts of, like, I can't do this anymore. Should I end it? Should I get sober? And in that contemplation, that permanent solution for a temporary problem was a big commitment. I don't do well with commitment, and I can't remember whoever heard where I heard that from, but it's fantastic. So I like to use it. And I had turned out, and I got home, and I woke my wife up, and I explained what happened, and where I was at with my life and my addiction and all this other stuff. And she said okay. And I got on the phone the next day with a doctor, told him the truth for once. I'm addicted to fentanyl, and I want to quit and live a normal life. So they prescribed me Suboxone. And when the prescription came into Walgreens, I got the notification that they were out of stock for like the next 5 days. Great. So I ended up finding something to hold me over for the 5 days, and Suboxone came in that the morning the Suboxone came in. I finished off whatever supply I had. Then later that night, I was like, all right, here we go, day 0. We're gonna do this. And I had made it like 5 hours from my last use before that insidious insanity was still slipping in there, the mental obsession, and fear again controlled my life. So I went and grabbed the Suboxone, and I broke off a tiny chunk, and I took the Suboxone, and it put me in precipitated withdrawal. And I don't know the best way to describe precipitated withdrawal, but it's all of the worst things and fears that I had experienced right now. And it felt like somebody was running barbed wire across my body, because all my nerves were going nuts. And just in full-blown desperation, I started screaming and yelling. And at that point, I start bargaining with my wife. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to treatment, and I'm gonna do this the right way, blah blah blah. She's like, what are you gonna do before you get into treatment? I'm like, well, I'm gonna get high. I can't do this. And she didn't buy into that. She thankfully, she did not allow me to negotiate my way out of that. So that by the time I was about a day and a half after of just being bedridden and sick, I was able to get out or get out of bed. And I had 2 thoughts. One was I need to get high, and then the other one was I can't do that again. I can't experience that again. So I ended up walking into an Alano at like 12 o'clock noon, and there was a guy sitting there just having coffee and all this other stuff, and I just walk in there and I'm like, is there a meeting? And he turned around, and I must have looked terrible, and people tell me that, you know, I was sweaty and clammy and all this other stuff when I first came in, so they remember how I looked. I just remember how I felt. And there was plenty going on that he saw that I needed to talk to somebody. He sat down, we talked, and he made me some coffee, and then he shot out a few text messages, and within 15 minutes there was 5 other men there, and they surrounded me, and I talked to these guys for hours. And it was like 5 o'clock, and I remember that my wife was going to be home by like 5:15. So I was like, I got to run home quick. My wife's never going to believe I've been at an Al-Anon all day. So I'm going to run home, let her see that I'm sober, and then tell her where I'm going to be. So they probably, you know, if in that situation, I would not doubt if they thought that they'd never see me again. But I came back in within a half hour after that, and I made it to their meeting. And that was my start. I had enough desperation that in the first 90 days of my sobriety, I went to 117 meetings. And I ended up getting it, you know, I got employment in that time. And, you know, I was employed by like my 30th day. So I still continued the next 60 days, making sure I went to at least one meeting a day. But in the first couple of weeks, I'd gotten a sponsor, and I sat down and I started talking with this sponsor and going through the book, and they brought me through this book. And I remember that, you know, I remember reading this book before, but the way it came alive and the way that it actually resonated with my life this time was electric. And part of that book even reads that we in turn sought the same solution with all the desperation of a drowning man. So when I think that might have been my big gift that I needed, was that I had the desperation of a drowning man to continue to seek this. So I was receptive and learned everything that my sponsor had to teach me. And by day 87, I came off the Suboxone. But I continued to show up and do all the things that my sponsor was suggesting. And I remember as we kept going through, you know, there's a big difference. First step as we're going through, I learned about, you know, this entirety of phenomenon of craving and stuff like that, that what I had experienced was not my fault. It's not that I'm maladjusted to life, that I had a weak will or anything like that. It's that I actually have a disease. But what I do with this information now that I'm educated is my fault. I am responsible for that. So that was big. Moving into my second step, it was a lot easier because I had came in here and I knew that fentanyl was a power greater than myself, and I had faith and hope that the rooms and recovery and the people in recovery were a power greater than fentanyl. And that was enough to start. So that was, you know, my big conception. I admit it. There is a power greater than myself that can restore my sanity. And third step was simple enough because there's a passage in 63 that says that if we kept close, or God would perform or would provide what we needed if we stay close and perform His work well. So that was simple enough for me to understand what it meant to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. That whatever the next right thing is that's put in front of me, I will do. And in return, everything I need will be provided. And so far, I have not found that to be wrong. I have found that so long as I do what is asked of me and what's in front of me, I am well taken care of. Life is better to me than I used to believe I deserved. And I have a new life because the old life I had was not worth saving. But I remember going through my 4-step and being really thorough about it, and my sponsor even told me that if there's something that would be incriminating, or I don't want the chance of somebody else seeing, that I could put down the name and then just put an X in the box of what my resentment was, and we move forward with that. And then when I got to my 5th step, it was a lot different because if you remember earlier, I mentioned that I had a sponsor and I got to my 10th step, so I had a 5th step prior to 11 years prior, and I was honest enough to keep it moving in the 5th step, but I wasn't completely honest, so I didn't experience the 5th step promises, and I never experienced any promises after that. And I would sit there and I would try to get close enough. I would try to get close enough with what was going on in my story that I did not, but I wouldn't touch it. I couldn't touch it. It seemed too great at the time. When I sat down and did this 5th step with my sponsor, he looked over he had my 4th step in hand. He looks over and he stopped and he said, "Okay, what's not on here?" And the rush came through. I had a moment of pause, but I opened up with that thing that I never said before. And I explained that when I was 11 years old and my father had his other daughter come live with us, that I was sexually abused, and videos and photographs were sold to other men online. And it actually, in that moment, there was like this anxiety crush, because I said it out loud for the first time to somebody else in my life. And my sponsor looked at me and said he loved me and that he doesn't think any less of me. And as he said that, I realized that the sun was still shining, that I didn't get struck by lightning, that the world did not crack open, or I didn't get swallowed in. I grew up with Catholic guilt from parents and grandparents and all that other stuff. And this was the first time that when I experienced something, I stopped and I realized that is not who I am. That does not define any bit of my self-worth either. And it was important that I opened up with that because, one, I felt understood, I felt seen, and I felt loved still in one of my biggest secrets that I had. But in the 6th step, when I'm sitting there going with my sponsor, I figured that there's no character defects that came out in that, right? He said, "No, there is." And we stopped, and I'm ready to get mad almost, but I kept enough honesty and open-mindedness and willing to hear what he had to say that he's told me that in the moment, at that time, I was a victim. And I was a victim to everything that had happened to me. After that, I was a victimizer. And I victimized myself from that moment until the day I did my 5th step. And I never allowed myself to grow past that, to experience any help, to become somebody who has a resource that can help someone else that's ever been in a similar situation. I victimized myself. And when I saw that, I understood. I understood that I victimized myself and I victimized the other people around me, thinking that people could not grow beyond their biggest defects that they've had. And I never allowed myself to grow past any shame, guilt, fear, pain, trauma. I never allowed myself to grow past any of that. I internalized it. And maybe that's because that's all I knew, but I also didn't, I never took advantage of any resources to find out if there's something else that there could be on how to manage that. And that was huge. That allowed me to grow past all of that. And then as soon as that had happened and I started going through the rest of my steps, I'm being told by a lot of people that I'm on fire, that I've like there's just life breathing out of me. I started sponsoring guys and started having, getting those types of experiences towards, I never had to be ashamed of it again. And those moments are what I will eternally be grateful to this program for, because I was fully willing to die with that. AA has never allowed me to die with anything. And one of the other big things was that people loved me through my character defects. And that's one of the things I owe back, is that I need to love people through theirs. I don't need to allow them to die by their character defects. I don't need to allow them to ruin the quality of their life with their character defects. I can love them through it, and I can help them through it. That was... I don't know how to explain anything beyond that than I have been given the power and the experience to help others. And as I started going through my 10, 11, and 12, everything came full circle. I started experiencing all the promises. The 9-step promises had come true. The 5th-step promises had come true. The 11-step promises came true. The 12-step promises came true. And I've been actually fully involved in living a new life that just came to me because I did the honest work that my sponsor put in front of me. That was all that was required. I didn't have to spend any money. I didn't have to climb any big mountains. I didn't have to do anything that was astronomical. All I had to do was be willing to grow past everything else, and then follow what my sponsor had done, because he followed what his sponsor had done, and so on and so forth. I followed the people in front of me. I didn't do anything that was groundbreaking. I didn't do anything that was new. I didn't reinvent anything. All I did was follow what was put in front of me. And in doing so, I discovered that recovery is doing all the things you never wanted to do to get all the things you didn't know you wanted. Because you hear all the time in a meeting about being happy, joyous, and free. I'm like, yeah, I want that. But I don't want to do all the other things. There's got to be other ways to experience happy, joyous, and free. But what people don't talk about in between those happy, joyous, and free is I no longer get controlled by fear. Fear does not control my life anymore. I don't live in a ball of anxiety anymore. I do not have to, I don't have to lash out on people anymore. I don't have to experience what it's like to have to continuously swallow things down. All of those things came to me because I did all the things I didn't want to do, and I didn't know that all those other freedoms were something that I wanted. I just knew in the moments that they happened that, yeah, this is not fun. But I was able to walk through all of it. Today, my life looks a lot different than it did when I got sober in February of 2022. I sponsor, I've got 9 guys that would probably refer to me as their sponsor. I have 5 guys that I actively meet with and see, and do active recovery work with on a weekly basis. I have since walked 3 other men through the 164 and gotten them through their 12 steps. I currently, on Monday nights, sit in my truck from 5:30 to 7 o'clock with 3 other men, and we go through the big book and read. And we're currently, we just finished up step 1, and we're going to start We Agnostics on Monday. And all of these things that I get to continuously do is I get to keep living in the book. I get to keep experiencing it, because there's been plenty of times that I've seen all these things, and like when I was one of the guys that I'd sponsored on his 4-step, they put themselves down, and that was something that I never caught for myself or anything else. But I saw that, and they had mentioned that, well, we read that part where it says sometimes it's remorse and it's ourselves that we're burned up at. I was like, oh shit, right? So I'm continuously learning from these guys as I'm going through the book and reliving it and expanding my experience, my knowledge, my exposure. And they put that on there. And I remember I brought this up to a guy that's been around for a while, and he said, I would never put myself on my 4-step because how the hell am I going to make amends to myself on my 8-step? And I thought about that, and I was like, that's a good point. But eventually, by the time I met with this guy in his 8-step, through the tools that I learned in meditation and prayer, it came to me that putting myself in my 4-step is astronomical, because in my 8-step, the way I make amends to myself is I put down the club. So I'm no longer going to pick up that club or that bat or whatever it is I beat myself over the head with. I am not going to pick that up anymore. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that where it belongs, away from me. That's how I make my 8-step to me. I don't pick that up, because when I pick up that club or that bat or whatever it is that I used to beat myself over the head with, I am not going to be useful to anybody else around me. That was astronomical, and I learned that sponsoring. I learned that from sponsoring other men and watching them put themselves on their 4-step, and then I prayed and meditated on it because I didn't have experience with that. And then by the time they got to their 8-step, the answer had come, just as the 11-step promises, that the right action will come if my house is in order. So that came, and I was able to start using that. And I picked that up because it's something I learned from a sponsee, that there is a way to put yourself on your 8-step. There's a good reason for it too. Things like this would never be, I'd never experience had I not actually had the desperation to be honest every step of the way. Had I not had the desperation to continue to seek and to continue to expand and grow. I'd never experienced this had I not been able to sit down and understand that I victimized myself from the time I was 11 years old to the time I was 30 years old. And victimized myself to never be able to grow past any trauma, pain, hurt, anything like that. That's what my life is like today, is that I get to continue to grow. I get to continue to expand. I get to continue to love people around me and actually have the best interest in other people, which is something that is astonishing to me, because I give me any amount of time, keep me away from a meeting for a week, and I'm not gonna. I have faith that I would stay sober, and that I'm not that fragile in sobriety, but I would be victim to my own thoughts and my own delusion, because if I'm not going to my meetings and I'm not practicing any of my step work, I'm not practicing the 10, 11, 12, I'm not continuously trying to grow, give me about a week and I'm going to become the biggest self-centered prick that you've ever met. And I know that about myself because I've done the work, because I've sat down and looked at all these things, and I had somebody that loved me enough to say, no, you're full of shit. And that was amazing. Somebody who loved me enough to say, I'm going to step on your toes before I step on your grave. That has continued to keep me in line and disciplined, because it also says in the book that we alcoholics are undisciplined people. So we let God discipline us by the way that outlined above. Other than that, I have nothing else super profound or anything cool to go on about people. There's a lot of people that know me in these rooms. There's a lot of people that have heard me speak on this show. And it just to be able to fill the time and give a complete show by sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I hope maybe it reaches somebody out there. If not, it gives you an opportunity to learn about me a little bit, and maybe you can come to the conclusion if you want to keep watching this show or not in the future. But if you are just tuning in, Yeah, I gave him a speaker meeting essentially for the last 45 minutes. Um, and I hope that it was of use to somebody somewhere. Um, I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. I haven't gotten a single comment. If I have, the internet's been on the fritz the entire time. And maybe none of this got out in the broadcast, and that's okay. But I appreciate all who have tuned in and listened. If there's anything that I can help out with, or that you need anything to come back at, leave a comment. I'll check the threads over the next couple days, and just want to say thank you to everyone that's been there, especially everyone that came before me, so that they could lay out this design for living. Because the way that this book is written, there's no way that I would be able to just pick it up, read it, and understand it, and be able to live with the examples they set forth. It was written in it was published in 39, and these guys were, the guy that wrote it, Bill, he liked to write in a Shakespearean type way. So sitting by yourself and trying to digest it, if you're someone that has been able to do that, you are extremely smart. For me, I sat down and I understood bits and pieces, and then my sponsor would say, "This is what you got to do now." Like, okay, got it. Other than that, I got nothing else. If nobody told you today that you're loved, let me be the one. I love you. You are worth it. Go out there and get your recovery, because no one's going to do it for you. It's worth it every step of the way. And remember, just got to do all the things you don't want to do to get all the things you didn't know you wanted. Until next week, we'll speak again.